The bloody massacre at Manor Place. Those who study the psychology of crime know that its foundation is often an inordinate, pathological egoism. A self-seeker of this kind loses all sense of proportion. He thinks only of himself. His sole aim is to gratify his own desires and whims. To him, the well-being and interests of others are alien, almost incomprehensible concepts. At times, a person is driven to crime by a sudden impulse, by a dreamer's fancy, or by jealousy. All this occurs. But the most dangerous, the most loathsome form of criminality is that based on selfishness pushed to the brink of madness. In English literature, this type of egoist is personified by Sir Willoughby Patterne. Such a man is harmless, even amusing, so long as his desires are met. But touch his interests, deny him a single wish, and this harmless individual begins to do terrible things. Huxley once remarked that human life is a game played with an invisible partner. Make a mistake in a game, and your invisible opponent will punish you instantly. If Huxley is right, then we must admit that the gravest, most unpardonable mistake in the game of life is overweening egoism. People pay more dearly for this error than for any other, unless, perhaps, those watching the game take pity and bear a portion of the loss themselves. I invite you to learn the story of William Godfrey Youngman. You will see the strange, sometimes haunting conditions under which a man must pay for his mistakes. In examining Youngman's case, you will realize that egoism is no innocent flaw. It is a fundamental evil that leads to horrific ends. About 40 miles from London, near Tunbridge Wells, once a fashionable resort, lies the small town of Wadhurst. It sits almost exactly on the border of Sussex and Kent. The surrounding countryside is rich and picturesque. The farmers prosper, selling their produce to the nearby capital. In the year 1860, a man named Streeter lived here. He was a farmer of modest means and had a daughter, a very beautiful girl named Mary Wells Streeter. At 20 years old, she was tall and strong, well versed in the rigors of country labor, yet no stranger to the town where she kept a circle of acquaintances. Mary Streeter had a friend, a young man of 25. She had met him by chance during one of her trips to the city. He was greatly taken with her. He visited Wadhurst and even stayed overnight at her father's house. Farmer Streeter did not discourage the courtship. He was clearly pleased by this brisk, handsome young man, who proved to be a charming and sociable conversationalist. He remained vague and evasive on only one subject. When Streeter asked about his occupation and his prospects for the future, the acquaintance deepened into the clever city dweller, William Godfrey Youngman, and the simple, country-bred Mary Streeter became betrothed. During this time, William came to know Mary thoroughly. Mary, however, knew very little of her fiancé. The 29th of July, that year fell on a Sunday. Midday had passed. Mary sat in the parlor of her father's cottage, a stack of love letters from her fiancé resting in her lap. She read them over and over, hanging on every word. Through the window, a neat green lawn was visible, a quintessential English country garden. Tall hollyhocks grew there, alongside massive sunflowers swaying on their stalks. Red carnations and bushes of fuchsia bloomed in tidy flower beds. Through the half-open window, the faint, elegant scent of lilac drifted into the room, accompanied by the distant hum of bees. The farmer, observing the Sunday peace, was deep in a post-dinner slumber, leaving the parlor entirely to Mary. In total, there were 15 letters. Some spoke only of love and were truly enchanting. Others, however, were laced with businesslike undertones. Reading these hints, the girl would knit her pretty brows in confusion. Take, for instance, the matter of the insurance policy. What a trial that had been for her lover until she finally settled it. Of course, her fiancé knew best, but it still unsettled her that he spoke so frequently of death. Death for her? She was so young, so full of life, yet, in the very heat of his romantic declarations, he would suddenly chill her heart with talk of the grave. In one letter he wrote, "My dearest, I have prepared the application and taken it to the life insurance office. They will write to Mrs. James Bond today, and she should have an answer by Saturday. Thus, we can go to the society together on Monday. In the next letter, just 2 days later, William's tone was even more pressing. Remember, my dear, what you promised me. You promised to marry me, and to tell no one of the insurance until we are wed. Please write to Mrs. James Bond and ask her to visit the office. Then on Monday, we shall go together and insure your life. These excerpts troubled Mary. She understood none of it, but thank God it was over now. Business would no longer interfere with their love. Mary had yielded to her fiancé's whim and insured her life for £100. It had cost her 10 shillings and 4 pence for the first quarter, but she did not regret the money. She had put William's mind at ease and rid herself of a tedious chore. The garden gate creaked, and a messenger from the station appeared on the path, holding a letter. Seeing the girl at the window, he approached and handed it to her, departing with a sly, knowing smile. He was a curious Cupid, this lad in his velveteen jacket, breeches, and heavy boots. Indeed, the boy fancied himself a messenger of love. Alas, he was the envoy of a far darker, more ancient deity. With impatient fingers, Mary tore open the envelope. 16 Manor Place, Newington. Saturday evening, July 28th. My dear Mary, I sent you a letter this afternoon, but only afterward did I learn that I need not go to Brighton tomorrow. That trip has become unnecessary. My affairs are all settled, and I can see you now. I am sending this to the 6:30 train from London Bridge tomorrow morning. I will pay the conductor to deliver it to Wadhurst. Please give the messenger something for his trouble. I shall expect you, my dear, on Monday morning by the first train. I hope to meet you at London Bridge Station. Tomorrow I must visit my uncle, so I cannot come to you, but on Monday evening or Tuesday morning at the latest, I shall escort you home. I will return to London on Tuesday night, to be ready for business on Wednesday. You know what business, I have told you, and so I wait for you on Monday. I hope to arrange everything properly. Goodbye for now, dear Mary. Forgive the short letter, but I must get to bed to catch the early post. Do not forget, my dear bride, to bring me all my letters or burn them. I kiss you and wait for you Monday morning at 9:15. Do not forget to burn the letters. Your ever-loving William Godfrey Youngman. It was an insistent, almost desperate invitation to come and enjoy the city. Yet, the letter contained oddities. What business was he referring to? Mary knew of no such business. And why this sudden demand to burn his love letters? The command grated on her. The imperious tone stung her pride. Mary decided, for once, to disobey. The letters were too precious to be treated so callously. She gathered all 16, tucked them into a small tin box where she kept her simple treasures, and ran to meet her father, who had just woken from his nap. She told him she was going to London to see her fiancé and would be gone for the day. The meeting at London Bridge. On Monday morning, at exactly 9:15, William Godfrey Youngman stood on the platform at London Bridge Station. He was waiting for the train from Wadhurst. The platform was a sea of people, and in such a crowd, Youngman was easily overlooked. There was nothing remarkable about him. Who could have guessed that within 24 hours, the name of this unremarkable young man would be known to all 3 million inhabitants of London, and would strike them with horror? Youngman was of average height and build. His appearance was utterly commonplace. He might have been dismissed as a total nonentity, were it not for the colossal egoism that defined his character. In Youngman, this selfishness bordered on insanity. He was profoundly convinced that nothing in the world mattered more than his own whims. The world was expected to bow to him. He was arrogant to the extreme, believing he could deceive anyone. What did it matter if the lie was transparent? If he, Youngman, intended to deceive, then people were obligated to believe him. By trade, he was a tailor, like his father before him. But the needle did not satisfy his ambition. Craving a career, he had taken a job as a footman to a Dr. Duncan in Covent Garden. For a time, he prospered, but eventually he grew bored. He quit and moved back in with his father, living off relatives who earned their bread through grueling toil. At one point, he claimed he was going to take up farming, an idea surely born of his idle visits to Wadhurst. The handsome cows, the hum of the bees, and the country air had appealed to him, and he spent his days dreaming of a life he had done nothing to earn. But let us return to our story. The Wadhurst train pulled slowly into the station, and from the window of a third-class carriage, the fresh, rosy face of Mary Streeter appeared. At the sight of her fiancé, the girl blushed even deeper. The lovers met. Youngman took her valise and led his bride-to-be across a platform crowded with ladies in crinolines and men in baggy, sack-like trousers, the height of London fashion in the 1860s. Youngman lived in Walworth, in South London. An omnibus stood near the station. The couple climbed aboard and rode nearly to the door of his home. It was 11 o'clock when William and Mary arrived at Manor Place, where the Youngman family resided. The layout of the house would seem strange to a modern observer. In the 1860s, the concept of a flat was unknown in London. Instead, a two-story house would be rented by a single leaseholder who lived in the basement and sublet the upper floors. The landlord, James Bevan, lived below. The first floor was occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Beard, and the Youngmans held the second. The ceilings were thin, and since everyone used the same staircase, the tenants knew everything about one another. The Beards, for instance, were well aware that young Youngman had brought a girl home to meet his parents. As William and Mary climbed the stairs, the Beards cracked their door open to steal a glance. Mrs. Beard later testified that William appeared to be treating his fiancée with great tenderness. When they entered the apartment, it was quiet. Youngman's father had left for work at 5 that morning and would not return until 10 at night. Only the mother was home, a kind, bustling woman, perpetually buried in chores, along with her two youngest sons, aged 7 and 11. Since the boys were still at school, the mother was alone. She greeted her future daughter-in-law and began to chat, asking about her life. It was only natural. She was curious about the girl who was to spend her life with her son. After lunch, the betrothed couple set out to see the sights of London. The Omen at the Green Dragon. No record remains of how this strange pair spent their afternoon. He, undoubtedly, never let go of his savage and horrific intent. She, perhaps, wondered at his distracted air while prattling on about village gossip. Poor girl, she was enjoying herself, while the shadow of death already hovered over her. However, one detail of their excursion is known. Mary's father had an acquaintance in London named Edward Spicer. He was a publican, a cheerful, blunt man whose tavern, the Green Dragon, stood on Bermondsey Street. Mary wished to show off her fiancé, and the couple called on Spicer. For some reason, the young man made a wretched impression on the innkeeper. Spicer pulled Mary aside. "You mean to marry this fellow?" he whispered. "Let me tell you something. You'd be better off taking a rope and hanging yourself in the attic. It'll come to the same thing in the end." But when a girl is in love, all warnings are in vain. Spicer's words, which would have proved tragically prophetic, seemingly had no effect on Mary. That evening, William and Mary went to the theater to see a tragedy. Did the poor girl realize, sitting in the crowded pit beside her silent fiancé, that her own dark tragedy would soon prove far more terrifying than anything on the stage? They returned to Manor Place around 11. The hard-working tailor was home this time. They all supped together, and then it was time for bed. The apartment consisted of only 2 rooms. The mother, Mary, and the 7-year-old boy lay down in the front room. The father slept in the back room on his tailor's workbench, while William and his 11-year-old brother shared a bed beside him. Did these simple people know, as they closed their eyes, that by tomorrow all of London would be speaking of their tragic fate? The father awoke, as was his habit, very early. In the gray, pre-dawn light, he saw a white shape. It was William, standing by his bed. In a sleepy voice, the father asked where he was going so early. William lay back down, and they both fell asleep again. At 5 o'clock, the old man rose, dressed in haste, and by 20 minutes past 5, he had descended the stairs and locked the front door behind him. With the father's departure, the last witness left the scene. Everything that followed is known only through logical deduction and circumstantial evidence. No one knows the exact, grisly details of those moments, and for me as a chronicler, that is perhaps for the best. Such horrors are not meant to be savored in their particulars. As I mentioned, the Beards lived directly below the Youngmans. At 5:30, just 10 minutes after the old tailor had left, Mrs. Beard was awakened by a commotion upstairs. It sounded as though children were running back and forth across the floor. The distinct, light patter of bare feet echoed clearly through the ceiling. She listened, puzzled. Why would children be racing about at such an ungodly hour? She woke her husband and pointed out the strange noise. Both sat up in bed, straining to hear. And then, suddenly, they heard a loud, gasping cry, followed by the dull, heavy thud of something soft hitting the floor. Beard leaped out of bed and dashed up the stairs. He did not reach the top landing. From the upper steps, he peered through the open door of the Youngman apartment. What he saw made him recoil with a shriek and fly back down the stairs. A moment later, he was pounding on Bevan's door, screaming, "For God's sake, come quickly. There's been a murder." Bevan rushed onto the landing. He, too, had heard the ominous thud of a heavy fall. Together, Bevan and Beard ascended the creaking stairs once more, the golden rays of the July sun illuminating their pale, terrified faces. The crimson landing. Again, they stopped short of the room. From the stairs, they could see the landing. White figures lay sprawled across the threshold and the floor, drenched in blood. It was a sight beyond endurance. 3 bodies lay on the landing, but someone was still moving inside. That someone stepped out into view. The terrified neighbors found themselves face to face with William Godfrey Youngman. He stood in his undergarments, saturated with blood, one shirt sleeve torn and dangling. Seeing his neighbors, William cried out, "Mr. Beard, for God's sake, fetch a doctor. Perhaps someone can still be saved." As they turned to run, William shouted after them, "My mother did it all. She stabbed my fiancé and my brothers, and I, defending myself against her, I think I've killed her." This was the explanation William Youngman would maintain until the very end. But the neighbors had no time for debate. They bolted to their rooms, dressed in frantic haste, and ran into the street to find help. All the while, Youngman remained on the landing, repeating his story to the empty air. I can only imagine how sweet the morning air felt to Bevan and Beard after escaping that cursed house, and how the local milkmen must have stared at these 2 disheveled, panicked men. They did not have to go far. On the corner stood Constable John Varney, as solid and imperturbable as the law he represented. With a deliberate pace that brought a strange comfort to the 2 frantic citizens, Constable Varney marched toward the house. Seeing the glint of the policeman's helmet on the stairs, Youngman cried out, "Look what has happened here. What am I to do?" Varney remained unmoved by the sight of the bloody corpses. He offered Youngman a most practical piece of advice. "Get dressed and come with me." "But why?" the young man exclaimed. "I killed my mother in self-defense. You would have done the same. I have broken no law." Constable Varney was not a man to offer legal opinions, but he was quite certain that the best thing Youngman could do at that moment was to put on his trousers. The aftermath. Meanwhile, a crowd began to gather outside, and another constable and an inspector arrived. The situation seemed clear. Whether Youngman was telling the truth or not, he had confessed to killing his mother and had to be taken into custody. On the floor, police found a large dagger knife, its blade bent from the sheer force of the blows. Youngman was forced to admit the weapon was his. When the bodies were examined, the wounds were found to be horrific. Wounds that could only have been inflicted by a person of great strength and violent energy. It became evident that Youngman was no victim of circumstance. On the contrary, he appeared to be one of the most cold-blooded villains of the age. But there were no direct witnesses. His murderous hand had silenced them all. The bride, the mother, and the little brothers. The sheer senselessness of the crime stunned the public. Indignation turned to cold fury when it was discovered that Youngman had ensured poor Mary's life in his own favor. A motive had been found. Investigators noted his feverish haste to finalize the policy and his strange demand that his letters be destroyed. These were the heaviest pieces of evidence against him. Yet, a chilling question remained. How did Youngman expect to collect a payout from the Argus Insurance Society when he was neither Mary's husband nor her relative? The scheme was so absurdly flawed that many wondered. Was the killer a man of profound ignorance, or was he simply insane? As the investigation delved deeper, it was revealed that madness was no stranger to the Youngman bloodline. His maternal grandmother and his father's brother had both been confined to lunatic asylums. Even Youngman's grandfather had spent time in a madhouse, only coming to his senses shortly before his death. Based on these facts, the Manor Place tragedy might be viewed today through a medical lens rather than a purely criminal one. In our more humane times, Youngman might have escaped the gallows. But in the 1860s, the law looked upon such men with a different eye. The trial opened at the Central Criminal Court on August 16th, with Justice Williams presiding. It was revealed that Youngman had purchased a murder weapon, a jagged dagger, well in advance. He had even brandished it in a public house. One patron, a law-abiding Briton, had remarked that such a blade was unfit for a peaceful citizen. Youngman's chilling reply was, "Any man has the right to defend himself in whatever manner he chooses." The man little suspected he was conversing with a maniac and stood but a hair's breadth from death. The defendant's life was scrutinized, but the analysis yielded nothing compromising. Youngman clung stubbornly to his original story. In his summing up, Justice Williams noted a fatal flaw. If Youngman were telling the truth, it would mean he had successfully disarmed his mother. If so, there was no need to kill her. Yet, he had not only failed to restrain himself, but had inflicted multiple mortal wounds. Furthermore, no bloodstains were found on the mother's hands to suggest she had been the aggressor. The jury took less than an hour to return a verdict of guilty, the final defiance. In court, Youngman remained composed, but behind prison walls, his volatile and vicious nature emerged. When his father visited, Youngman met the old man with a torrent of abuse, accusing him of mistreating the family. But his true fury was reserved for the innkeeper, Edward Spicer. When he learned that Spicer had advised Mary to hang herself rather than marry him, Youngman went beside himself with rage. His vanity, his most defining trait, had been wounded. "I have but one wish," he bellowed, "to get my hands on that Spicer and smash his skull in." This unnatural bloodthirstiness confirms, better than any diagnosis, that Youngman was a true monomaniac. Settling slightly, he added with cold arrogance, "Do you really think a man of my character and resolve would allow someone to insult him so? I would have killed the insolent wretch." Despite all exhortations to confess, Youngman took his secret to the grave. He never wavered from the claim that his mother had murdered the others and that he had killed her in self-defense. It is highly probable he had concocted this alibi long before the first blow was struck. As they ascended the scaffold, the chaplain pleaded, "Do not leave this world with a lie upon your lips." "I would be lying if I took the blame." Youngman snapped back, "I am innocent." He believed in his own fiction so intensely that he hoped, until the very drop, that the world would eventually believe him too. The curtain falls. William Godfrey Youngman was executed on September 4th, barely a month after his crime. The gallows were erected outside Horsemonger Lane Jail. Over 30,000 people gathered to watch. Many had waited through the night to secure a view. As the prisoner was let out, the crowd erupted into a savage howl. He had no defenders. People of all walks of life agreed that he must hang. He died with a strange, detached calm. "Thank you, Mr. Jessup, for your kindness," he said to the warder. "Give my regards to my acquaintances." The bolt clicked, the rope snapped taut, and the final act of this horrific drama was over. In William Youngman, English criminal annals record one of the most cold-blooded killers of his time. While few doubt he deserved his fate, it is worth noting that circumstantial evidence is rarely absolute. To a critical legal mind, The chain of events might suggest a different conclusion than the one reached by the court. Yet, the blood at Manor Place leaves little room for mercy. A note on the Victorian home. In the England of this period, the concept of a flat, a residence contained on a single floor, was associated with the poor. Respectable English families preferred a vertical arrangement, a kitchen in the basement, dining and sitting rooms on the lower floors and bedrooms above. This tradition of the multi-story townhouse remains a hallmark of British architecture, though the flat, from the word for a level surface, eventually became the standard for modern urban living across the globe.